Welcome to the Temple of Geek podcast. My name is Sohaila, and I'll be your host today as I sit down with Jihae to discuss her character Kasha in the upcoming show, Dune Prophecy. If you haven't watched the first episode of the show, save this episode of the podcast for later and come back because there will be spoilers. If this is your first time tuning into the Temple of Geek podcast, welcome. The Temple of Geek podcast has been around since 2012 and is hosted by various geeks from the Temple of Geek team. Here we cover all manner of geek and pop culture news and events. To our returning listeners, thank you again for tuning in. Really appreciate you being here. You've probably heard me on this podcast before or seen me on TikTok geeking out over sci-fi, fantasy, comedy, and rocking some custom earrings that I make, as well as discussing North African and Middle Eastern representation in UK. All right, on to the main event. 10,000 years before the ascension of Paul Atreides, Dune Prophecy follows two Harkonnen sisters as they combat forces that threaten the future of humanity. This is the origin story of the Sisterhood, the fabled sect that will become the Bene Gesserit during one of the most turbulent and pivotal turning points in history. Jihae plays Reverend Mother Kasha, one of the sisters that formed the bond with two Harkonnen sisters, and who becomes the Truthsayer and confidant of Emperor Corrino, who occupied a position of great influence in the Imperium. Thank you so much for being with us today, Jihae. It is a pleasure to meet you.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. Well, how are you doing? It's so nice to meet you. How's your day been?
No complaints. It's a beautiful day in the city. I don't know where you are.
I'm in Canada, up near Toronto. It's a little overcast, but not too bad.
Yeah. No, it's like 65 today.
Nice.
Incredible.
Hey.
I don't know if to be sad or scared, or I think I'll just be happy. I think I'll just
Take
stay
the warm weather. It's starting to get a little too cold here. But I mean, Canada, we're used to it.
Exactly.
Awesome. Cool. So I watched the first episode and I'm like blown away by just how much they got into one episode. There's so much. The performances are amazing. Your performance is incredible. Tell us a little bit more about Kasha. We get to see her she's younger in the beginning, and then when she's older, when you play her, and then she dies at the end of the episode, which I was not expecting. But tell us about the character. Tell us a little bit about what drew you to playing her.
You know, I'm a big fan of Carl Jung. I have a lot of his books, and I know that Frank Herbert was really big on the Jungian archetypes, and of course, like, do you need to get sold on a story about women that rule the world? I mean, I was like, yes, yes, please. So I really dug in that way. I mean, I actually also back in 2011, I did a rock opera with John Patrick Shanley based on my third album, and the storyline that we focused on was based on Persephone. And if you look at the triple goddess archetype, it's Persephone and her mother Demeter and Hecate, or Hecate, and Persephone goes to the underworld. So this three female senior Reverend mothers helming this sisterhood, training young acolytes to become these supernatural, powerful women. It's such a beautiful, wonderful story, and I, you know, for me, I do so much. I really believe in finding a way to embody the character in a physical form. So that got me into learning much more deeply than I normally do on meditation, Kundalini yoga. How do I open my third eye without getting into any kind of like Wiccan side of things? But it was more because I know that because I know how the Bene Gesserit use like poison, all stuff. I started doing cold plunges.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I tend to kind of go really deep into research and to try and physically embody the character. And found Kasha to be this like really, you know, she is the most gifted Truthsayer within the Sisterhood, which is why she's the right hand of the Emperor of the known universe. And while her alliance and her allegiance to the Sisterhood and the cause for the Sisterhood is, number one, she does have this maternal feeling towards the princess and cares for her.
Yeah. The training that you did is kind of similar to the training that we see the acolytes do in this first episode, like out in the rain doing what kind of looks like maybe a martial arts and with maybe a little bit of yoga. Is really cool to see.
Yeah.
And really cool that you got to kind of do a little bit of that as well, even if you weren't necessarily in those scenes.
Yeah, they actually had us go through some really fun training, and it was really
Oh,
bonding, and yeah, it was beautiful.
oh, that's awesome. Was the
Yeah.
purpose of it to have like, all of the actors bond together as a sisterhood?
Yeah, all of us, including
So,
the princess. All the girls got together, and we trained a lot.
oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
Anything fun or interesting or unexpected during that training?
Yeah. So the first time around, we had these two women that's wonderful performance. They're performance artists, and they were helping us kind of do like learn esoteric stuff. And one of the things that we did was we close our eyes. We get teamed up into two people. We close our eyes and we imagine that we're following each other. And I was teamed up with Chloe. And when we opened up our eyes, they were like, oh my God. We're like, what happened? And so apparently we were just kind of doing our own stuff, like intuitively trying to follow each other, but doing our own stuff. And at one point I started mirroring Chloe. So all the other girls, I think, saw that, or no. I don't know if the girls saw it. The teacher saw it and they were like, wow, that was awesome.
So cool.
Yeah. Cool.
Nice. All right, going back to what you were talking about with this, the trio that you were talking about in this case, but we have four sisters that are kind of like, create this team, and they are sort of, heading up the sisterhood in a way. How did these four sisters come together? We have Tula, Francesca, Kasha, and Valia. We don't really get to see that. Maybe we will later, but we just know that the four of them seemed close when they were younger, and they still seem fairly close when they're older, even though they've all kind of gone on different paths.
I think I don't know how I can answer that question actually, but I think historically, that there was two sides to choose from basically, and these particular girls having, not just because of their friendship and love for each other, but also because of their belief in Mother Superior's vision for the sisterhood, and their allegiance to the cause, to make sure that dangerous men don't screw up the world, decided to stick together.
And even though they did kind of go their separate paths, there still seems to be that sort of friendship, but there almost also seems to be a hierarchy a little bit. We kind of see Valia dismiss Kasha's worries when she comes back from the Imperium. And we also kind of see her straight up tell Tula that she just wants blind obedience.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit more about like that dynamic within these four sisters.
I think Valia is definitely the leader in which you see how power corrupts, but also in order for a leader to lead, there's a certain level of egotism, I guess, required. That's a fine line. I think for leadership, where you need humility, you need self-confidence and self-reliance and all these things. So it's an interesting example of how power corrupts people with the best intentions.
Yeah. That is true. And we kind of also see her when she's younger. She forms this opinion right away of what needs to happen, even though it wasn't something that Mother Superior tells her to do. She's like, okay, well, this is the goal. Okay, then we have to go about it this way. And she convinces, the other sisters of that as well. So it's really interesting to see. And I'm excited to see more. Hopefully we get more flashbacks and things like that. I do want to switch a little bit to a different topic. And you mentioned dangerous men. So we get introduced to Desmond. He seems to be, just another soldier cut, back from, his time on Arrakis. But then there seems to be a lot more to him. And there's an interaction that we see after Kasha, is truth-saying. And she says, he's saying the truth. But then as he walks away, it's almost like she senses something. Do you think she does? Do you think she can tell something about him? And if so, what?
Oh, absolutely. Something's not quite right. She can't put a finger on it. When she looks into his eyes, she can't look away. And it wasn't until the Emperor said something that she was able to disconnect. There is definitely something that she felt, but she couldn't, and she had all these whispers, but she couldn't actually figure out what it was. Something was covering it. Yeah.
And it's interesting that when she goes back to the sisterhood or to the sisters, she doesn't mention that. She just says that something doesn't feel right and she's not able to articulate it. Is it because she doesn't know what, or she's like afraid of, vocalizing it, you think?
Oh yeah, I had the same comment.
Yeah.
No, I had the same thoughts, which I shared. I think her goal, I think Kasha's goal was, I need to stop this wedding to make sure that the princess is not killed because of this wedding. I think my immediate goals were so specific that I didn't bother dealing with something that I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
The character,
Mm-hmm. Okay. Are we going to be seeing more of Kasha at all, like maybe in flashbacks or anything like that? Because I love the performance so much, and it was so sad to see like where she ended in that first episode. I wasn't ready to
that's
say
so
goodbye.
kind. Thank you. I think that there was definitely talks about that, but because of the strike, when I got there in July, I had to leave in 9 days, and then when I got back in November, there was like no time to, like, I've never in my life shot so many scenes in a span of 10 days.
Wow.
It was
incredible.
insane. So yeah, there was no room for that. Yeah, but maybe I don't know.
Maybe. I mean, it's also 6 episodes, so it's not too long of a show. Again, they're cramming so much in every episode. It's incredible. Yeah. The other unique part about your character is there is a younger version and an older version. What was that process like? And did you get to collaborate with Yaren about playing the 2 different?
Yaren and I, we did a Zoom. We kind of did a meeting also with the showrunner and one of the producers to try and have her emulate my likeness or each other's likeness. Yeah. That was nice.
Did you guys actually work in person, or it was more kind of on Zoom? Scheduling was different times, maybe?
Yeah, it had to be on Zoom because of the time constraints and when I could come back and such. Yeah.
Well, and I know we're kind of running low on time, but there's one more topic I wanted to get to. So being a singer and seeing all of the different vocalizations that are happening throughout that episode in the score and with the sisters, were you involved in that at all?
No, I was not. There was talk before when there was a different composer. We were speaking about collaboration that way. But when the strike really put a damper on everything, but for a good cause. Very important.
Yeah, no, for sure. Absolutely. And I'm glad that we still get this show and it's still incredible. I don't even know, like, how much better could you have made the show? Still pretty solid. I mean, again, this is all based off of the first episode, but still pretty solid from what I've seen. Awesome. And if we have time for one more, I just want to ask, like, generally, what's something that you think will be unexpected or a surprise for audiences watching Dune Prophecy?
There's at least a couple you're going to be like, what? Yeah, for sure.
Twists and turns or connections that are being made with,
I would say it's a combo of both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything connecting back to the Dune movies?
No, it's within the story.
It's within the story. All right. That is really cool. Looking forward to that for sure.
Before we sign off, I want to thank Jihae for being our guest on the podcast today. It was such a pleasure speaking with you and learning more about your character, Kasha. And this is going to wrap up this episode of the Temple of Geek podcast. We want to thank everyone who tuned in today and especially our guests for being with us today. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to hit us up by using the handle Temple. Do you want to check out some of our other episodes or shows? Why don't you head on over to templeofgeek.com, where you will find all sorts of content that pertain to the world of Geek.